This is our self-care in parenting. It's not what you think. Self-care has a lot of associations. Some of them can bring stress to people initially. When you hear about self-care, it can have this feeling of like, do I have time? What does that mean? Is that too much? Am I going to somehow fail in doing this? And others, for it's just kind of a mystery. We have to find for ourselves how we define self-care as individuals. It's a custom job. It's not a rush job. It's important, and we want to treat it like that. So we're going to get into some information that will help.
And for us, self-care and parenting is a lot about how you're parenting because our culture parents in a way that drains parents. And it's not like that everywhere. And so we are into cultivating those practices that nurture children that and also nurture the adults caring for them. This is a 3-day seminar. The first day is modifying 5 of your mindsets. We're going to look at paradigms and the shifts that we invite you into. If you so agree that you would like to have this new mindset. And then we have 5 methods for your madness, mayhem. We're going to go into things you can do. And then the last day is if you're curious about the course. So it's one thing to learn about what we teach, and it's another thing to have constant exposure to it, practicing it in community with other parents. And so the third day, we will explain what we have laid out and how we have made it so that you can integrate the things that we're teaching in the first 2 days.
So, what we would do for a child, we practice for ourselves. What we do for ourselves benefits the child. Self-care has a ripple out effect. In this real-time self-care exploration, you're going to learn, we're going to explore together how to take care of yourself while you take care of your child or children. And this brings up this question, or this statement. If it's not healing for you, it's not healing for the child. And this is one of the first cues that you don't have to do things that in your mind are off-putting or in otherwise unappealing. Yeah.
Yeah, you think that I have to do this because I'm a parent and it doesn't feel good. And that's the first clue that there's probably another way to do it that does feel good.
In fact, you know you're onto something when it feels good. That is how we confirm from the wisdom of our bodies, our nervous systems, that we are doing something that is sustainable and healthy. So a question we'll give you a moment to consider here is, what does it look like to take care of yourself while you take care of your child?
Some of you might be like, I have no idea.
Yeah. And if you're just thinking about it, that's fine. We want to give you a minute, though, to just see that picture and feel. One of the things you might notice as we speak today is you're going to feel certain things like, oh, that question feels bad. That question feels hard. Or I have a good feeling when I think about that. And that's where self-care starts. Is what does it feel like when you think about the things you do or need?
These answers, the very basis of life, being able to eat at the same time, being able to sleep at the same time. Yeah, staying hydrated, nourishing with good food, water. Yeah. Working out, taking a break when I'm overwhelmed with chaos and modeling it for them, trying to get good sleep, keeping my marriage healthy. Awesome.
Taking time in the morning and on the weekends to just be. Okay, we have a yes, we have our answer coming in. So put a Y in the chat if either or either or thinking has
Thinking.
plagued you. Thinking.
We
If
didn't
either
see
or
that.
thinking has plagued you, it's either them or me, and it's got to be them, right? So you default to your child and you put yourself on the back burner. Who can relate to this? Yeah. Oh, look at all these whys. We sound like kids. Why? 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 Okay, that's a lot of whys.
We're going to take a moment to recognize our inspiration for the practices that we teach. And we draw from research on modern hunter-gatherer societies around the world. Uh, our human being, our genes were evolving 90% of the time in hunter-gatherer, or 95% of all of our evolutional history happened in hunter-gatherer experiences and hunter-gatherer ways of life. And we find that children come, well, before I say that, children come into the world expecting their genes, their genetic makeup, come into the world expecting hunter-gatherer lifestyle. And when it doesn't happen, there's a clash. And so when we study hunter-gatherers around the world who all have a huge variety of different ways that they live, but a lot of commonalities in the way that they think and that the way that they treat each other and treat children, and then we apply those things to our children, things just get so much easier. Children get so much calmer, and there's just a big sigh of relief. So
I just want to state here that imagine how many expectations throughout the day we have of our children. And there can be a lot. We expect them to listen, or we expect them to be happy, or expect them to go to sleep, right? Imagine, so there's their experience, our experience with them, and then they have this one primal expectation, which is that they will be born into a hunter-gatherer kind of sensibility and approach to rearing them and helping them thrive. And that's, instead of meeting that experience of the hunter-gatherer, which we'll see what it prioritizes, they meet something that amounts to colonization or a compliance model, or depending on how you think of it, right? What we mean by that is there's some outside force that doesn't match the inner nature. It doesn't match the inner nature. And that's when kids go, rah! I don't like how this feels. And I'm going to show you every day.
Yes. So let's look at who we're talking about when we're talking about modern hunter-gatherer societies. We are talking about the Inuit up north. We're talking about the Melanesians who are in Oceania, and the Sukuma in Tanzania, the Aita around the Philippines, the Mayan in the Yucatan Peninsula, the Andamanese around India, the Dene here in the Southwest, the Yakagar, Siberia. I can't remember who they
these faces. Isn't that what you want your kids looking like?
Karens of Thailand.
Look at this.
The Trobriand Islanders of Papua New Guinea.
Mm.
So they're a lot, and people are studying them and seeing how do they behave with their children. And one thing that we can see very clearly is that they are masters of protecting children's autonomy, which is like a very different way of raising children than the way we do, of instilling the sense of competence and supporting connection, both for children and for each other. And we, on the other hand, are pretty weird. We are weird. Like our culture is like 5% of the population of the whole world. We are Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. Joseph Henrich is the author of The Weirdest People in the World. And he wrote this book explaining that when we talk about, scientific studies of humans, most of those studies, 95% of those studies, are about weird people, Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic people. Whereas most of the world does not think or behave the way that we do. And I think of it as a spectrum. So we've got hunter-gatherer societies on the one end of the spectrum. And then on the other end, we've got weird societies. And it's not so much about let's all just be hunter-gatherers now. It's more like we just need more of a balance. We need to find something that's both good for our nervous systems, which is what the hunter-gatherer way, and how to navigate our modern world and enjoy our modern conveniences and ways. So it's a both and, not an either or. Put a Y in the chat if you know what I'm talking about when I'm saying that we're one way and that you have traveled around or have met people in this country who have different sensibilities and are closer to the cultures of hunter-gatherers, where they just kind of behave differently. And we're going to go over what these differences are, but just to get an idea of who feels like I know exactly what you're talking about. We have a
Hmm.
lot of differences. So
Hmm.
good, a couple of you. Cool. So let's look at the different values that we're talking about. Or And I shouldn't call it values because it's not that hunter-gatherers don't value what weird people value, but the weird culture has a bias toward their values, obviously. And there's a strong bias toward control. And we want to control our children. We want other people's children to be controlled. We want we want to control everything. We want to control our emotions.
Hmm.
Control is just a big theme in our culture, have things under control. Whereas in hunter-gatherer societies across the world, autonomy is so valued that they believe that it is harmful to force another human being to do anything. It's it's like people just don't they're not into forcing. So much so that when little babies start walking, they don't put up baby gates. They just like have somebody follow that child around and from a distance so that that child feels their sense of autonomy. It does and doesn't feel like there's somebody helicoptering them. They want them to feel like you're free. But they stay watching them and then swoop in if something isn't safe. So autonomy is a big practice in hunter-gatherer practices. And you might notice that when your child is not getting the autonomy that they want, they might have something to say about it.
And I just want to say, as we're going forward, you might notice an association with these weird biases are where a lot of rewards are given in our society. When we appear to be in control of ourselves, our emotions, our children, there tends to be a sense that we're doing the right thing or we're being accepted. And it's just something to notice as we go over these weird biases, what your relationship is to those and why it would be a challenge to potentially integrate a hunter-gatherer practice
Mm-hmm.
when
Yeah.
there's not a lot of reward or affirmation of those types of
Or
practices.
permission.
Permission. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. And like you might be thinking, I can't give my child full autonomy the way hunter-gatherer does because it's not like we're just out with a bunch of huts and
Hmm.
we've got streets with cars and I can't just let my child.
Hmm.
And so part of what we teach is how do you instill that sense of autonomy in our modern or our modern's not the word, our particular society.
Hmm.